Okay, James Rousseau is here today to discuss his book, Success on Your Own Terms, which is all about finding your passion and honing in on that path to success. And James was a corporate executive with Chase Bank and Allstate, and now he runs a nonprofit, the Core Link Solution, that's going to help people link to their core purpose and pursue their passions. So we have a great discussion about people finding their purpose, success, working through adversity, and so much more coming right up. Well, welcome, James Rousseau, or Trig. Do you prefer to be called that? That's kind of like your rap name, or what's it?
Yeah, whatever works for you. James is fine. That's totally
Okay.
fine. Yeah, most people in the Christian hip hop industry call me Trig, and yeah, sorry about that.
Are you still active in that community? Are you still?
Very much. Yeah, we now have a Sirius XM channel, so I spend most of my time managing that, our Holy Culture Radio. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so you wrote this book about success. I wanted to ask you, what are your kind of success influences, I guess? I know you mentioned in the book, I mean, there's several quotes, but Stephen Covey, Peter Drucker. Are you familiar with like Rob Dial or David Goggins? I got his book right there.
David Goggins, I've heard that name before. Rob Dahl, I don't recall that name. No.
Yeah, check him out. He's got a podcast
Okay.
called The Mindset Mentor. It's great. Or what other ones were really influential to you to help you maybe steer you in that direction? Because it is kind of like I wouldn't say like a religion, but it's kind of like a community where people who are all into this kind of stuff. I'm really into success kind of books, motivational, inspirational, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, earlier on, I've read all kind of books like Lincoln on leadership and Seven Habits of Highly Effective People was always like a go-to book to go back to. I think the later years, it's been books like Traction, EOS Entrepreneurial System,
Hmm.
a great book. Um, the Big Accountability book by the former military gentleman. I can't remember his name, but it's a really great book where he talks about, thou must be accountable, right? And so I think the influences have changed over the years, but yet there are lessons I still go back to. And then there's so many non-authors, right? When I think about people I've worked with that just emulated the kind of leadership that was impactful. So whether it was Matt Winter at the Allstate Insurance Company, he was president of Allstate Home and Home and Auto Insurance at JP Morgan Chase, whether it was Jamie Dimon from afar. I didn't know Jamie well, but I had a few opportunities to meet him. And just a list of, I once did a presentation, Chuck, on leadership, and it was and the first page was people who influenced my leadership. And I had me in the middle and this kind of dial around me of names. It was at least 18, 20 names.
Dang. Okay. So yeah, there is a lot. So I think that, but you're still following that stuff. You're still reading books and that
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
let's talk. I think you don't really get to this definition until chapter 10, but let's just define success. Because I like what you said. It was something about, obviously some of it's so easy to point out, like winning the Super Bowl or Grammy or the World Series. All those kinds of things are easy. But then you talk about, it's interesting. I've never heard this mentality about singles, because that's kind of the home run. But what about having singles? So give me an example of that.
Yeah, well, a single could be a stepping stone on the way to the major goal or milestone that you're after, right? And so a lot of times when I'm talking to people about, where they want to go, the first part of the conversation for me, Chuck, is passion and purpose. Like, what are you really ultimately chasing? And it's always the last interview question when I'm interviewing somebody for a new role. I ask them, if you won the lottery today and won a ridiculous amount of money, and after you take the trips, after you buy your family the homes they want, even your cousin and all those folks, give out money, what are you doing with the rest of your time? And then he's go, oh yeah, right. And I go, okay, awesome. I want you to stay right there. Tell me about that. And then you get them talking about it, Chuck, and you just let them talk. And you say, okay, how is that related to this job you just applied for? Like, how is that going to help? How is what you're doing now associated with that? And oftentimes it isn't. And because people feel like, well, I have to do one thing and earn income another way, which just dives into a whole nother conversation. And so once we get settled on, okay, this is what you're really chasing, then it's about, okay, what does the journey look like? What's the vision? And I always say, think of your vision as you're on one side of the river. Across that river that looks like you cannot cross it is your vision of where you think you should be going. The goals are like rocks you can jump on across the river. I consider each one of those rocks a single, right? You don't leap across the river in one great leap. You got to jump on some boulders, some rocks to get across that river.
Yeah. So when you ask that question to people, because I'm just thinking, like, I feel like I've kind of asked that question to people before, and I feel like a lot of people's answers these days, and also, I mean, I used to work in the school, so I worked with a lot of young
Mm,
kids, and I
yes.
feel like a lot of people are so lost right now. Either they don't know what they truly want to do, or they'll say something like, "Well, I just want to watch sports all day, or I just want to watch TV. I want to do nothing." Like that
Right,
really
right.
is, or play video games, whatever it is. That's like a lot of people's dream. So is it
Yeah.
more of a thing like, because I know you use an example in the book about this music producer engineer guy that you worked with that just did music
Mm,
stuff his whole time, but didn't really make money from that. His money was from this real estate stuff, and that allowed him to work on that. So
that's right.
is that maybe the goal for some people, is to find something that can pay the bills so that you can watch sports or play video games all day?
It could be. I mean, I don't want to, be too what's the word, prescriptive for everyone. But
Hmm.
in my conversations, I find that it's a couple things. So let's use an example. So you're talking to someone that, I really want to use my hands. I really want to build things. I love building things. Okay, but you're applying for a job inside of the insurance company to be a right, to be a salesperson. Help
Yeah.
me. And so then a part of it is, okay, so when are you going to spend time with that? Because when you talked about that, the way you lit up, your facial expressions, I'm seeing endorphins release real time. I need that kind of energy in this job, right? So we got to figure out how you do some of that part time, weekend, nights. If we have inside of our organization Habitat for Humanity, maybe I get you involved in that. So you're spending time on a corporate sponsored thing. But I think, Chuck, as leaders, for us not to ask that question of people and figure out what that it is, no matter how off the path it may be for us. If you miss that, you miss to me, a primary lever for motivating a person.
Yeah, and don't you think part of it too is sometimes maybe taking a risk? Like I know, like my dad, he was a very successful accountant and financial planner, but when he was in college, he really loved philosophy, and
Right.
now he's retired and he's writing books, he's getting degrees in philosophy and psychology and all this stuff, and he's spending all his time. I mean, he could just sit around and play video games or watch TV. He's
Right,
retired,
right.
but
He can do
he's
it.
spending all his time studying this. And I think back, I'm thinking like if he would have pursued the philosophy and that kind of stuff. I mean, he could have been a professor at a college. And I
Right,
mean, you
right.
think sometimes people just think, oh, well, that's just a pipe dream. I shouldn't do that. But maybe they should.
Absolutely. I think most of us have laid it up and said, look, when I was a kid, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be whatever. I wanted to walk the runway. I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted to be an electrician. I wanted to be an architect. And then at some point, let's call that early teens, you get this idea implanted of you. You have to make an income. All that stuff you've been playing around with, this is what you need to do over here. And many times, well meaning people, that's the message they give us. And so we take off down that path and say, at some point, I'm going to come back to that thing, right? Or I may do it here and there. And you can actually reverse engineer it and say, well, if you don't take on a ton of debt, if you actually chase the formal education around that thing that you're passionate about, if it needs that, if you now there's so many ways to learn, get mentors in that space and so on and so forth. And I'm going to use a word that is not used a lot nowadays. Take on an apprenticeship with someone who already does it well to become their apprentice and grow in it. Why can't you go into it?
Yeah, because I think you talked about having faith in your gifts, your innate abilities. So how do you keep that faith and not get discouraged along the way? Because it seems like it's such an uphill battle. Like I'll just give you an example for myself. Like with the podcast, I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this 5 years. I'm coming up on
Mm,
4 years, but I said I'm
nice.
gonna give it at least five, where I'm gonna just try my best and see what I can do. But how do you know when it's time to maybe give up on something, or it's time to move on or shift your
Yeah.
focus?
And I think it's different for other people. I can only answer for me and being a person who is trying to be faith first, for lack of better terms, right? Is one your prayer life, right? I mean, I believe in prayer and not shotgun drop off prayers, but like I say that to say it to me, to slow down and pray and try to listen to what I believe God is telling me, right? And to also use the Bible to make sure it illuminates those things to me. Part one. Part two is what you just said, actually having a plan with a duration on it that gives you a chance to breathe. And so I'm tremendously impatient. And so I'm the worst at this sometimes, right? Because if it doesn't work quick, I get frustrated. I want more sooner. And thank God I have a wife who always reminds me, okay, did you tell me before that most businesses don't go from being in the red to cash flow positive for at least 18 to 24 months? Yes. So why do you think it's going to be different for you? right? If it's unless it's high tech and a unicorn or illegal, it takes some time to turn the dial, right? And so giving ourselves that grace to do that, I think is number two. And then thirdly, I use this phrase in my book, having a passion point incubator, having people with you who are incubating your idea. And the reason I use that language is because it makes you quickly think about eggs that aren't hatched yet. They're put in the incubator. Why? Because it keeps them the right temperature and it protects them because they're at a volatile state. They can't protect themselves. You need that in your journey. So you need people around you who are people you know, like, and trust that are going to be honest with you about what you're doing, but also going to give you encouragement and help you with self course correction, right? When things aren't necessarily going the right way. And so I think those are three things that come to mind.
Absolutely. No, that's all good stuff. And yeah, your book does help out with some of that. Here's a question I had that you don't really go into. I don't know if you can really explain the details with this, but just because you talk about your backstory and the issues
Mhm.
with your father, and I want people to buy the book, so I'm not going to give it away. But I worked, like I said, I worked in the schools for 17 years, so I've heard a lot of stories.
Mm,
That one did kind of like was a jaw dropper. I was like, oh my gosh, I was like,
mm.
people need to read that. But with that stuff, with that kind of baggage, whatever you want to call it, how did you not think about that stuff all the time and get hurt and upset and feel worried and sad and let it bring you down? You kind of use that, and I don't know if you use that, but it didn't distract you from propelling you into all the success that you had.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're kind, man. Thanks for reading the book. That's really awesome. Hopefully you did the audio version or something.
No, I wish was there an audio
There's an
version?
audio. Yeah. Yeah. I should have
Okay.
told you. Yeah. It's
No, you
audible.
sent me the digital, and I
Yeah.
just split it up into I read it in 3 days because it was
That's
no,
awesome.
actually I read it in two. Yeah, because I split it into three parts. I read
Gotcha.
75 pages a chunk, and then yeah,
Sheesh.
that's a
Sheesh.
short book.
That's great, man. Thank you. Thank you. Well, so one thing I talk about in the book is when my father passed, I was I think 19, 20-ish. And my version of acting out was to try to validate myself through work. But I didn't know I was doing it, right?
Hmm.
So because I never had his validation or never believed I had his validation, um, I felt like, when I closed the casket, it was like, man, I'm closing the casket on me. I'm not getting this. I'm never going to get it. And I think unconsciously I was seeking it in other places. And so corporate structures allow you to seek it well, right? If you can come
Hmm.
in, perform, get more titles, grow, so on and so forth. And then when I woke up and was present to it, that was another shift, right? As I'm talking to, I had a counselor therapist, and we're talking about it. I'm in my 30s. I'm still wrestling with it, and he helped me with some closure through some techniques. And I think I talk about that in the book. So read the book. You'll learn a technique or two on closure. But I'm another 10 plus years beyond that, and I would say it still comes up. And what I try to do is think about it from perspective of he was who he was, and maybe I didn't even understand what he was giving me. Part one, part two, what am I constantly learning from that? Right? What am I learning that hopefully I do differently? And then part three, I believe in God's plan. I totally believe that God allows you to have experience to help you grow in different ways for the big purpose that He has for you to serve. And that's the other thing I would encourage people to think about is as you're thinking about your passion and purpose and the core gifts and talents that you have, how are they? Why were they given to you? Try to answer that question. Why did you get that? Why did you get that special thing? I was liking it to, like I said, Greg Louganis diving off the board back in the day at the Olympics. How does he do a triple somersault turn and then go in the water with zero splash and make it look like a walk in the park? There's a gift, but he also had to hone the gift. But why him? Why was he given that? I think we all have to ask ourselves that question.
Hmm. Yeah, no, very good. So, why do you think that like your path, you went the corporate route as opposed to getting into something worse, like drugs or gangs or something
Mm.
like crime or just there's so many other stories that where people go the other way. They have this bad upbringing and they just well screw it, let me I'm just gonna drink a beer or smoke a
Mm.
joint or whatever, and they just go down this dark path.
Yeah. Well, I think, one, the Lord had a purpose for me, right? I'm gonna start there. And, when I look at what I'm doing today with everything we do on the faith side, our organization, Holy Culture, I can see where while I was probably angry in my 20s that I wasn't able to be the producer I wanted to be and be in rush producer management. We thought I had a deal. We didn't be with Flavor Unit management, Queen Latifah. We thought I had a deal and then I didn't. I saw the path that God took me to get all the corporate experience and learn how to do all these different things, and now come back to the genre in a position where I can help build infrastructure for the genre. If I had to come in the way I was coming in, I would have. I'm not sure I would have gotten to the same place and be as I think helpful as our organization's trying to be to the genre large scale. And then why not the other ways? Look, outside of God directing me, I had some parents with some good genes. My One of the things I can say about my mother and father, they had great work ethic. But I
Hmm.
had great examples of work ethic. I mean, my mom and dad, when they were together, not only did they work really hard, my dad was an insurance man and a pastor. My mom was a legal assistant. I got a chance to, I used to go down to her job and get a chance to type on the typewriter in the office, but just watch her work. And then they took in at least 5 foster children that I can remember by name, right? When I was, between the age of probably, I don't know, 6 to 12, 14-ish, right? And so watching them love on people and bring people into our home. And then after they got divorced, my mom, I don't know, worked at probably 2 jobs so we wouldn't have to change, our living, so to speak, and still stay in the home we were in, all those kind of things. So I had never not seen a good work ethic.
Hmm. And so maybe that, yeah, because I know you started the job and it was to get turntables or whatever. And then it
Yes.
just like you went down that path and then
Yeah.
maybe you were just too busy to do all that other crap.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that too. I definitely kept myself busy with the music stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What do you think? You work these corporate jobs. Talk about that a little bit. You work for Chase and Allstate. Like, did you enjoy it? Like, how did you find purpose and meaning with a corporate job like that? And also, I'm curious, just how many hours a week did you
Oh,
average in those high level corporate
oh my
positions?
gosh. I mean, I'll start the last thing first. I mean, hours per week, Chuck, I mean, easily 60 to 80, 90 sometimes. I mean, just because depending on where you are and building something, right? I mean, you're just there. You're just in it. 60 to 80 is probably about right. 12, usually 12-hour days plus weekends, 14-hour days if you needed to, plus weekends. I mean, you're going through a merger sometimes with some of those jobs. I mean, you just are trying to do what you have to get done. And you're excited about it, to answer your question. When I was at Chase, I was in HR service delivery. I had a chance to have a team initially in New York, about 60 people, and then relocated to Delaware. We had a team of 100 or so, and then we grew to about 200. And then when we had the merger, it grew again. And I think for me, it was exciting because to your question around passion and purpose, it gave me a chance to mentor a lot of folks and help people grow in their careers, whether it was directly or kind of indirectly through my leadership and them being a part of my organization, and then be a part of a lot of different cross-functional teams in the company, whether it was working with the auto team and the home lending team while I was in credit card, and us trying to figure out a go-to-market strategy and just honing new skills and impacting other people, but then also being on, diversity councils and things like that are close to heart and trying to help, impact people. And now you know, distance later from each of those jobs, some jobs at least 10 plus years, you re-engage with folks that you had time with and were able to impact. And it's amazing to see their growth, right? And feel like you were a part of that story.
That's really cool. So when we talk about like judging people by success, either good or bad, I feel like that's kind of an issue right now in the world where
Mm,
people look down on people from their success, either by being too rich and having too much success, or not having enough success and not working hard enough.
yeah.
Talk about how do we balance that as a world? I guess I don't know how to fix this issue, because for me it's like I agree with you. I think everyone has their purpose, and as long as we're all on the same path with that, with trying to fulfill our purpose, like we're all kind of equal in a way. But I think other people look at success differently.
Yeah. I think the easiest answer to it is what God has for you is for you. I mean, full stop. What God has for you is for you. And so the comparison is the thief of joy, right? When we compare ourselves to other folks. And what's so interesting is many times, my apologies, many times, we forget that while we're looking at someone else that we think has it so much better than us, someone else is looking at us that thinks we have it so much better than them, right? I mean,
Mhm.
let's just be honest. I mean, we're still in one of the richest countries in the world, and we still have places where people don't have clean water or a place to sleep, and not just a few people, but in mass. And so I just think, again, what God has for you is for you. I want to be thankful and have gratitude about what I've been given and be a good stewardship over it. The fact that I have a roof over my head, clothes on my back, a wife of 26 years, a son that's 31, a grandchild, so on and so forth. Am I, where I am relative to other folks? I don't want to focus on that.
Yeah. Did you ever have that where people looked at you? I mean, you're climbing this corporate ladders, and then they said like you sold out, or like any of those kinds of issues?
No, actually, the opposite. When I left corporate to work on a nonprofit um, in 2018, that's probably when I got called. I got calls that were like calls of intervention. Like, how can you leave the C-suite? You're in the prime of
Right.
your career. You have so
Yeah.
many money making years ahead of you. And my simple answer was, I'm chasing purpose. Like, I have a purpose that God has called me to. I've been working towards it for quite some time, diligently trying to be a better saver, better steward, not buy up to my income and save. I mean, at one point we were living in this home, and some friends will say, "Man, why you still live in that small starter home or whatever it is you live in? You can afford to do." Yeah, yes. And one, if you think about it in that vignette, right, in that movie, in the movie I'm living in called Chasing Purpose, I need to squirrel away so I can get to that point of freedom and go work in my purpose.
Hmm. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I feel like that's a problem though with a lot of people right now where I think I kind of alluded to this earlier where I just feel like a lot of people are lost. Like, do you think
Mm.
that's one of the biggest issues in the world? Because I mean, if you turn on the news right now, it's just this group and that group and the hate between each other,
Yeah.
and they're blaming this person or that person. To me, it just seems like a lot of these people are very lost. Like when somebody does a mass shooting or these kinds of things, like you could say it's this group or that group, but I feel like those people are just lost. Like they lost their purpose. I mean,
Mm.
that is not anybody's purpose to hurt others,
Yeah. No, I
right?
think that's, yeah, I think there's some truth to that. And I think, one of the things that we can do, particularly for our youth in that regard, is try to have those conversations with them to help them find purpose. Because it's easy to look at social media as an example and only see highlight reels. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a part of the challenge too. If all you see is like just like the example I use with Greg Louganis, I'm making the triple somersault and landed, but we didn't get to see all his practice. How many times did he do a belly flop? Right? How
Right.
many times did he hurt his back? I mean, you hit that water from 100 feet up and hit it the wrong way. That is an injury, my friends. And so when you look at social media, those are the highlight reels. Most people don't post, today I sucked. I missed 3 meetings. I didn't deliver the report I was supposed to. Almost got fired. Show me 10 of those posts. You're not seeing those, right? And
Mhm.
so if that's your basis of insight, if that's what you're looking forward to be like that, it's an impossible task.
Well,
Right.
right. And I think that's one of the things that the guy I follow, the Rob Dial, would talk about is that success is not sexy. Like if you saw what he was doing to, behind the scenes to
Absolutely.
make his podcast and how he got to where it's not sexy. It's the same. I think you bring that up in your book with like showing Walter Payton. And, obviously when you watch him on film and games, it's amazing. But like
Right.
his workout regimen is like insane, but
Crazy.
probably not that exciting to watch somebody work out like that for
That's
that
right.
many hours. Like to actually, if you followed him around, it'd probably get kind of boring.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't like it, and you would ask, and you may even ask, "Why the heck are you doing this? Why are you running up the side of these mountains during the off season? The team hasn't started working out yet." And Walter is running up hills of rocks all summer and whatnot, right? And he said, and I think his answer to that question would be because I want to be better at what I do. I simply want to be better every year.
Yeah, and isn't part of it you're trying to sometimes obviously compete with other people, like if you're in a game, but also a lot of it with like Walter. I mean, isn't he maybe trying to compete with himself and break his own records and lift more weight than he did last time and those kinds
That's
of
right.
things? I feel like that's how it's a better way to grow is to compare it to your previous, not other people's.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
200%. 200%.
Yeah. Another thing that you brought up in the book was talking about when with women and how they tend to shy away from asking for help. I thought that's interesting because I think that's something that is kind of misconstrued a lot, where they talk about women don't make as much. But the reason for that, a lot of times, if it's in the same position, it's because they're not asking for the raise or
Mm.
they don't ask for as much.
Hmm. Yeah, and and that when I wrote the book, let me see, it was 2012, 2013. I think even more data has come out in terms of some of the inequalities and disparities that women have to deal with. Right?
Mhm.
It's a mountain. So first of all, I just want to lay the groundwork for that, and that women, not unlike other classes of people or segments, better stated, that are not on equal footing, need help to get on equal footing. But then inside of that, the data had shown that they may not always ask for help. And I would say that is true for all of us. I just did a podcast episode literally 2 weeks ago, Chuck, called "Are You Willing to Ask for Help?" That was a big segment of the podcast, right? Because the data shows that most of us aren't willing, and there are 8 or 9 key barriers to that, starting with I'm a giver and maybe an overgiver. Number 2, maybe I don't trust to ask. Number 3, maybe I am self-defeating before I ask, kind of self-doubt and talking to myself in words such as I don't deserve it. And the list goes on. And so there's been a lot of research on this, and I would encourage folks to look into it. If you can't think about 2 or 3 people that are co-laboring with you, co-journeying with you, you should stop and ask, why are you not asking for help?
No, that's good advice. One thing, kind of to piggyback on that, with women and just romantic relationships. I don't think that's something that you brought up too much in your book. But how do you think a wife or a husband can either help or hinder somebody's success? Because that can sometimes make a big difference either way.
Well, big time. Again, I'm tremendously blessed. The Bible says when a man findeth a wife, he findeth a good thing, and I believe it because I'm living it. Having someone who is, again, co-journeying with you daily and that is sharing a vision with you, that sometimes we use this term, right, of a shared vision. That is, I don't know what is more priceless than that. Having somebody who literally is walking with you and willing to sacrifice. Both of you are making sacrifices at different times to go in that same place, versus relationships where you feel like you're kind of isolated and then you come together and maybe eat, and then you're isolated, and so you're not doing it together. And so it should feel like a family plan, right, versus just your plan.
Supporting each other. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great stuff. So yeah, tell me about, is it the Core Link? Is that your website?
Solution. Yeah.
Core Link Solution. Yeah. Is that is that a nonprofit, or?
We are a nonprofit 501c3 private foundation, and here to revitalize communities by empowering people to reach their potential.
So you rely on donations then?
Well, we sort of, yeah, we do some donations, and then we are going into grant season, right, to apply for grants and such to support us. And we also have a Holy Culture radio channel on Sirius XM, and we'll use that as well to do fundraising, as well as get some sponsors for some of our shows.
Okay.
15 shows on our channel.
Okay, so I'll put that in the show notes, and then obviously people should get the book. Now for some reason I've forgotten the name of your book.
Okay, that's okay. Success in Your Own Terms. 6 Promises.
So that's what it is. Success in Your Own Terms. Yeah, it's a great book. Easy read. I didn't know there was an Audible version. I would have done that, because I'll listen to those on double speed or time and a half. I can get through it really fast. But yeah, easy read, good stuff. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Chuck. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Great conversation with James. Make sure to check out his book, Success on Your Own Terms. Check out his website, the Core Link Solution, in the show notes, and follow him on social media. You can support the show the same way. Follow us on social media, like, share, comment, all that good stuff. If you want to go above and beyond, I'd love a rating, a review, and make sure you're subscribed wherever you watch or listen. I appreciate all your support for the show, and my guests appreciate your support as well. Have a great rest of your day. Shoot for the moon.